The Hoops and Hockey Podcast.
Ball's into Taylor. At 8 seconds, what's he going to do? Oh, a little fake there, gets past Watson, into the lanes. Jumper goes! And he's fouled! One to come! And the Scorchers taking the lead. We're down to 15. Murray inside to Fraser. 10 seconds, what's Fraser going to do? Battles his way to the basket. Goes baseline, scores!
Beautiful! Scorchers come away with it. Oh my goodness, the noise there is amazing! Payne outside, Kalin, he'll take the roof off. He does! Kalin for three! Scorchers up by 4! Wow!
Hello everyone, I'm Niall Gray and this is the Hoops and Hockey Podcast.
The Hoops and Hockey Podcast.
My guest today is a man who has covered the game for over 3 decades. From the national leagues to the national teams, from the BBL to the NBA, from Eurobasket to the World Cup and Olympics. This man has photographed them all. I'm delighted to be joined today by my great friend, Mansoor Ahmed. Welcome, Mansoor.
Thanks, Niall. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Glad to get you on. Now, as I said in the intro, you've been covering this game for over 3 decades, man. That's a long, long time. What I want to do is take you right back to the early days. How did you first get into basketball? What first piqued your interest in the sport?
Well, I had aspirations, Niall, of being a professional basketball player back in the day. I wasn't cut out to be a football player or a cricket. I was a bit of a wuss when it came to the outdoors, didn't like the rain. And PE teacher took us inside and gave us a quick introduction to this game called basketball. And I was quite tall back in the day in school. And I thought, yeah, I kind of like this. I wouldn't mind exploring this sport a bit further. And lo and behold, I wrote off to several clubs, of which one was Manchester United, would you believe, who back then were linked with the football club. And I had a trial. And I went along and you know, thought, oh, maybe this is the start of a promising pro career. I'm going to go to the trials, I'm going to kill it, and I'm going to get a contract. But unfortunately, I wasn't good enough. There was other players much better than me, much taller than me. And so instead of shooting hoops, I shot hoops, if that makes sense.
This would be anybody that we would know from back then when you had your trials of Manchester United that people listening would know.
Well, Joe Forber was the secretary of the club, and he was the one that gave me the invitation to come and try out for the team. So this would have been going back to about 1984, 86, somewhere along those lines. And I do distinctively recall going up against a certain 6'10" guy in the name of Danny Craven, who obviously went on to play for the Giants quite successfully.
Yes,
late 80s, early 90s.
I'm sure Danny Craven won me some McDonald's at the arena in Manchester. I'm sure he did. I'm sure that was him.
They used to have the promotions, didn't they? If they scored 100 points or more, they would get unlucky days.
That's it. Never forget the good days.
Good times.
So when did you go from playing to picking up a camera?
It would have been when I went to college. So I finished high school and I didn't do well as I thought I would in my GCSEs. So when I went to college to do my business IT course, I was given the chance to choose 2 GCSE subjects to go alongside it. And I thought, well, okay, I'll do my maths again. And I'm going down the list, and they had so many wacky and crazy courses that we weren't really given back at school. So your traditional subjects like maths, English, chemistry, geography, they were on the list, but there was other courses like photography and computer programming. And I thought, oh, photography sounds interesting. Only because back at school we had a couple of chemistry lessons where the teachers showed us how a photograph was made in the darkroom. And it kind of got me excited, thinking, oh, wouldn't mind learning a bit more about the photography side of things. So I did that. I took a year's GCSE in photography, and obviously I was still madly in love with basketball, and I basically married them both together.
And what was the first time you photographed a basketball game? Or when was, I should say?
Well, I jumped in right at the deep end. My first pro game was the Carlsberg playoff final at the NEC. It was Kingston against Sunderland. And I remember that clearly like it was yesterday. I was sat courtside and I'm there with my little camera, one little lens. And I'm surrounded by all these professional photographers with their massive lenses and 3 or 4 camera bodies. And I'm like feeling a bit inadequate. I'm a little kid sat there and I'm thinking, gosh, I'm out of my depth here. What's going on here? When I stuck at it and I enjoyed the experience so much that I thought, you know what? I want to make a go of this photography thing. And that's how it started.
How did that come about, though? Did you get offered work by somebody, or did you just like thinking, oh, I'll try for a press pass to see if I can go and take some pictures? How did it actually start?
You know what? I just wrote off to the league. Back then, the league was still in its infancy. I think the basketball league set up in '87, so it's only 2 years old. And I just took a punt. I just wrote a letter explaining who I was. I'm a photography student at college, and could you advise me how I can go and cover some games? And they basically wrote back, and I had a media pass, and it gave me access to the games. It was fairly straightforward back then.
That I can remember in my very early days working for Tip Off when I got my first press pass, and I was like, oh wow, this is amazing. What was the feeling like for you when you got that press pass?
It was like gold dust. I had a little piece of card there that got me access to courtside to any BBL game in the country. And it was just, I felt like I was Superman. I was like so powerful. I could just walk in and just start taking pictures. It almost felt like I was like a small-time paparazzi. Nobody could say anything to me. I had this little golden badge and I could just walk in, and it was really powerful.
Do you still have it, or is it gone?
I do.
You
I
do?
do. Yeah, and the funny story about that is, Niall, in those days, the media pass, you used to have a passport-sized photograph next to your name. And when you look at the one that I've got, you see the full-grown beard, you see the big afro, and I look back now thinking, crikey, was that me 30 years ago? Crikey.
Where's the hair gone?
Exactly. It's gone. Getting old now.
So, going back to that game, how did you feel after? Did you feel yourself thinking, oh, do you know what? I want to do this. I really want to do this. Or did it come later on?
It probably took about a year's worth of going to these events, because at the beginning, I felt like I didn't belong. I'm just a nobody. I've just walked in and I've got a little camera, and, I'm competing against these established sports photographers that cover not just basketball, but football, cricket, rugby, cover sport for the national newspapers, for the locals, the regionals. And I just felt, hold on, I don't belong here. And it took a while just to keep going to like local league games and just keep practicing my craft, just like any athlete would keep, putting in the hours in the gym. I guess I was no different. And obviously back then we were in the film days, so I kept going back to the darkroom, processing my film and just learning from my mistakes. And the more I did that, the more I thought, actually, hold on, I want to keep doing this. I want to get better and better, and I want to keep, exploring this craft.
And we're just talking about the film, because obviously nowadays everything is digital.
Yeah.
How long would it take you? So you're at the game, you take a load of pictures. How long would it take before your prints? Would you go home and start the print process straight away, or would it a day or two? How long would it take in those days?
Well, back then, for the first, I would say 8-9 years, it would be a case of just going to the games, shooting the games, coming home, and then during the following week, I would post off the films to the labs, because we didn't really have many instant labs in town where you could just drop the film off and come back in an hour. And it'll probably take 3 to 4 days before I would get the set of prints with the negatives. So there was a lot of guessing work, I guess, about did I get the shot? Did I get that dunk by Alan Cunningham, or that pass by Alton Bird? It was a guesswork, I guess, because unlike today, where the moment you take it, you can look on the back of this camera and see if you've got that shot. Back then, I couldn't do that. And so it's all guesswork. Is the shot in focus? Is it blurred? Have I got the ball in the frame? It was all anticipation, I guess, waiting and waiting. And when I got the pictures back, more often than not, I was disappointed because obviously there's no chance for you to make adjustments on the fly because
Yeah.
it's film and you don't know what you've got. So either you've hit the settings or you haven't. Unlike today, where if the settings are right, you just go back in the camera, change a few more, try again until you get it right. So for the first 10 years, 8 to 9 years, it was just a case of waiting best part of a week, I guess, before the results came back. And as I got more and more confident, I started to process my own films at home. I managed to get a 100-meter roll of black and white film, which I divvied up into smaller 36 exposure rolls. And that proved to be a lot cheaper because obviously back then film was very expensive. I mean, for sports photography, for indoor sports photography, we're talking £7-8 a roll. And when a roll is only 36 exposures, in sports, that just can go really quickly.
Yeah, I mean,
you could hold down the shutter, but the camera within 10 seconds, it'll just whiz off the whole film.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally see where you're coming from. I mean, I had just a tiny little, instant matic camera. You'd have 24, whatever it is, or 36 on there, and you made every shot count, didn't you? And those, not like today, where you just go click, 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 and you got your burst. You can have your burst photos. Every shot had to count. So how many?
Yeah.
So if you go back to a normal game back in those days, how many rolls of film would you go through? Do you think, and say on a finals day?
A typical one, I'd probably go with about maybe 4 or 5. But you got to remember, back then I wasn't working. I was still a student, still studying for my degree, etc. So money was tight, and it was hard to come by. And so basically, I had to go with as fewer roles as possible. And I guess for me, it was a case of discipline because I knew I only had 4 roles, and I've got 3 games to shoot that day. So I had to pick my moments when to take the shot, when to not take it. Unlike nowadays where you can just go for a burst of 15, 20 shots. It doesn't matter because you're not going to run out of film. But back then, I was always conscious of the fact that, hold on, I could end up without any films left within the first 3 minutes of the game. So I had to learn to pace myself, and I had to learn to pick my moments. And I guess that's standing me in good stead now because I still employ that same discipline, even with the digital age. In that I choose my shots carefully.
Yeah, so it would have been bad to go through your film in those days and then you got nothing left for the celebrations.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, it happened once or twice where I came very close towards the end of the roll and we were at the podium and I was like, oh, I hope I don't run out of film here. It was almost the equivalent of running out of battery power these days. But then back then, when I got the results back, from a 36 frame roll, sometimes I'd only come back with maybe 4 or 5 usable shots. But then that was just the nature of the beast. It's one of those blink and you'll miss it moments. And it took me a while to learn the hard way back then. But film was a great discipline for me because nowadays it's all too easy. You just get yourself a decent sized memory card, decent camera, and away you go. And it's cost effective. Back then, I was wasting hundreds of pounds on films, on processing costs, just to kind of make a name in sports photography.
I bet, though, you've got some gems from those early days. I know you said you only had a few from each role that you liked, but I'm sure there's a handful of gems in there that are the perfect archive.
You know what? You're right, and especially now with the lockdown, I'm having a lot more time on my hands to go back to my film based archives, which I'm still working my way through digitizing, and I've come across some that I don't even remember I took. There's some pictures of Alan Cunningham winning the trophies, Alton Bird, Colin Irish, and some of these names I've just started to kind of come back into my mind. So you got the great Billy Singletons of the world, John Tresvant, Terrell Myers, Todd Cawthorne. These heroes of the 90s and the early 2000s, and I go through them and I'm thinking, wow, I was actually there. And I think the BBL's been live streaming some of the classic games on YouTube and what have you from the early to late 90s, and I've managed to catch a few of them and I'm like, oh look, there I am. It's like full-time with an afro and a beard, and oh my god, look what I'm wearing. I'm wearing these big massive jeans that nobody would ever dare to wear these days. And it's a blast from the past. But yeah, some good times.
That's right. I mean, it's like when they showed the 2001 final. I think that's only probably my second year, and I was looking at it thinking, where am I? Where am I? I knew I could picture where I was sitting. I was looking for myself on there, and then I saw you. And it's like, it's one of those things. I go back and watch these old things now, and there you are. There you are. You watch all the Eurobasket, the GB games. There's Mansoor. There's Mansoor there. There he is. He's up there. It's, where's Wally, but where's Mansoor?
Yeah, it's just, I'm blessed that I've managed to cover this beautiful game of ours for such a long time.
Yeah.
It's a labor of love. I don't even think about it as work. I just think about it as something that I'm very passionate about, and I just enjoy it. And obviously right now I'm just missing it to death.
Yeah. Before we get back to the timeline, just want to get your thoughts on it. What do you think is better, a really good quality film shot or really good quality digital? What has that best look for you?
To me, it depends. I mean, what era you're trying to publicize. If you're trying to go for that old gritty look, of the 90s and the 80s, then film's the way forward because the pictures are all grainy and you've got, the black and white and it's got the added nostalgia feel to it. But if you're going for something more modern and more up to date, then obviously digital's the way forward. I mean, some of my film-based pictures, I look at them now and I feel that historical importance behind the image with the way it was taken and the way it, film has a different feel to it. When I was shooting with film, there was a different feel to it than when I was shooting with digital. That makes sense.
No, it does indeed. And of course, I suppose nowadays, when you digitize your old negatives, you can actually play about with those pictures now. You can sort of almost tweak them, make them slightly better or bigger resolution.
Absolutely. I mean, Photoshop is a wonderful thing, and you've got all these inbuilt filters where you can give, life to these old age negative-based images, where you can make them look as digital as possible. But to me personally, I wouldn't alter them that much. I'll keep that authenticity going because at the end of the day, that was the era.
Yeah.
Back then when it was just film, it wasn't digital. So why would you want to cheat that historical element of it?
Do you remember the day that you switched from film to digital?
Yeah, I do actually, because when I found out Nikon, because I'm a Nikon shooter by trade, when I found out they were bringing out their first ever digital camera, I was so excited. I thought, oh, thank goodness. I'm not going to have to go and develop film and scan the negatives in and all that. I could have instant results. And I went into town and I placed the order, and I think it was about £3,500.
Oh my goodness.
2001. And I just went and did it. I went and bought the camera. I came home and I remember my dad saying, "What are you doing?" I said, "Dad, I've got a new toy to play with." And he's like, "Man, put that toy down and get in the kitchen and do some washing." It was crazy. And the thing was, I had to learn a new set of skills because with digital came, there was all these extra settings I had to worry about, like white balance and all that stuff. And it took me a while. And I remember the first event that I shot with my digital camera, believe it or not, was the, let's see now, 2001 Eurobasket in Turkey.
Do you remember, because obviously you've got an expensive camera and you're going abroad with it, you must have been absolutely, keep you safe.
I was buzzing because when I was sat in the photographer's pit, I had several of the other guys who hadn't even seen that camera because they were still a couple of months behind the UK with the stock. So they came up to me and they were like trying to bribe me, saying, "Yeah, I'll give you my camera and $2,000 in cash for that camera." And I'm like, no, you're fine. Keep your camera, mate. I'm going to keep this. Because obviously the strap had the model on it, and people would have seen that in Istanbul, and they would be like, "How has he managed to get his hands on that when we still haven't got ours stock yet?" And it was quite a powerful feeling knowing that I've got a camera that most of the other guys don't have.
Just out of interest, how big would the memory cards be back then? I suppose they've been quite small, and you probably needed lots of memory cards.
Yeah. Well, with that particular camera, I got myself a 512 megabyte memory card. And it cost me, I tell you, I remember this because I still have the receipt to this day. It cost me 380 quid for a 512 megabyte memory card for my first ever digital camera. It's insane.
It is. I think my GoPro is like a 512 gigabyte card.
But there you go. There you go. For 300 odd quid nowadays, you could probably get a 2 terabyte memory card.
Yeah.
You know, but back then that was like the biggest size card you could get. And I thought, you know what? If I'm going to go and buy this new gear, I want the best. Because to compete with the best, I have to get the best. So I went and got the biggest size memory card I could. And looking back now, I'm thinking, crikey, 300 odd quid for a small memory card now. But it's all technology, isn't it? It's all
exactly. It improves. Yeah.
Buy something today, and tomorrow you'll find it cheaper elsewhere, and you'll probably find a better model. It's just the nature of technology.
Yeah, I suppose in those days, because again, I'm thinking back to my little digital camera I had then. The memory cards would have been a lot thicker and bigger than they are now. Was that the case for this one?
Yeah, absolutely. This was a very chunky. It was made by IBM, and it was a very chunky card, and I could actually feel the internals in my hand when I was like rattling it around. I could hear the bits inside, and it was just like, what am I holding? But back then, obviously, something that small to hold that amount of memory, it was unheard of.
That's a really good story. It's just, I didn't think I couldn't. I obviously not being a photographer, I just didn't know when this sort of switch was happening from film to digital. Right.
Yeah.
Continuing with work-wise, do you remember your very first commission? The very first time you got a work?
First time I got commissioned was probably, let's see, 96. And it was a magazine called FIBA Basketball Monthly.
I remember it well.
And the editor was a certain Rob Dugdale.
I think I've heard of him.
Yeah, I think I've heard of him as well. And I think the story was that one of their photographers got stuck on the motorway on the way to I'd like to say it was a final, but pardon me, my memory is a bit sketchy of that time. But it was a big event because they were sending their own photographer down. He got stuck on the motorway, and I was ever present at all these big events, and I got asked, did you fancy supplying us with some pictures because our guy has not arrived on time? And I thought, wow, yeah, go for it. And I didn't even ask how much I was going to get paid or anything like that. It was just that buzz of being asked and the buzz of, you know, potentially seeing my work in print. And yeah, it was unbelievable. I went out and bought, I think, 3 copies of the magazine. Gave one to my mum and dad, and I think I kept the other 2.
Have you still got them?
Yes, I have.
Good man. Now, let's move on. Obviously, in those days, you were doing a lot of BBL. That was your early mainstay, wasn't it? Going to BBL games and events.
Yeah, that was my bread and butter.
When did the likes of, say, a European basketball or an international game, do you remember when that first started?
I started doing it in 89, and I think 92. And it might have even been in the FIBA Basketball Monthly magazine. There was an article about the NBA is sending 2 teams over to London to play in an exhibition game. And I read that and I thought, no, they can't do that. It's the NBA. Why would they want to come to London? Lo and behold, they did. They sent over Orlando Magic and Atlanta Hawks. And I'm a basketball nerd, whether it's BBL, NBA, you know, and when I found out it was Orlando and Atlanta, I thought, sod this for a game of soldiers. I'm going to see if I can get myself in. Because obviously you had a very young Shaquille O'Neal and a rookie coming in by the name of Penny Hardaway. And on the other side, you had Dominique Wilkins. And I thought, wow, only 4 years previous, I saw Dominique and Larry go at it, Game 7, Eastern Conference.
My favourite game of all time, as you well know.
As the commentator said, it's a duel. Put down your receiver.
Yeah, you are watching what greatness is all about. Yeah,
absolutely. There you go.
We can quote that one to the cows come home. Because I remember that as well, bro, because that was at Wembley Arena and they played 2 games.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate to see Atlanta win because that's who I wanted to win. Because of Dominic
Wilkins. Absolutely.
But that was 8,000 Wembley Arena. So they had 2 games
Yeah.
And the total attendance is still less than what you'd get at an O2 NBA game.
Absolutely, but back then it was unheard of for an NBA team to come over to London. This is way before the Olympics, way before the NBA became as popular as it is today. And to see these two teams in person, I mean, for me, it was just unreal. I mean, you've got Shaq, and every time he came towards me, I was actually quite scared because I thought, what happens if he goes diving for a loose ball or goes for a little scuffle under the basket? Because I'm right underneath the basket with a guy called Scott Cunningham. He was the Atlanta Hawks photographer. And I'm thinking, geez, if he comes diving, towards me, I'm going to get crushed here. And seeing somebody that big up close and personal, it absolutely frightened the bejesus out of me. I'll be honest with you. But I left that weekend knowing that, you know what, I want some more of this. This is a drug that I could take all day long. It was fantastic. You had two teams from the NBA. You had stars from screen and film and other sports in the arena. I remember bumping into Linford Christie, John Regis, Tessa Sanderson was there. There's all these other sports stars came out in force to watch the NBA, and I thought, crikey, I want me some more of this.
Yeah, because we had that, didn't we? And then we had the McDonald's Open in '95. So that's '93, the Orlando game Orlando games against Atlanta, and then '95 at the McDonald's because Houston Rockets came over.
Correct. Yep.
And that was it for 22 years.
Yep. Absolutely.
No, 22 years. I want to say 12 years. 12 years.
Yeah.
2007.
Yeah.
Now, I want to take you on a bit further from '93 to 1990. Oh, was it 6 or 97? 96. Let's go 96.
Okay.
And this is when you started what was a love affair, was it not, with Panathinaikos?
Absolutely. So on the back of the NBA coming to town, I thought, I want to travel. The BBL is good, but it's not taking me to where I want to be. I want to sit with the best in the world, not just the best in the UK, and do what I do. So, lo and behold, 96 and Paris, EuroLeague Final Four, and I thought, hey, why not? Let's apply for it. So I applied to FIBA, and lo and behold, they said, yeah, come on in. So I thought, great. Now, up until then, I hadn't flown on an airplane since I was 6 years old. Absolutely frightened. I'm about to, fly to Paris. There was no internet back then, so I just went on a whim. I went into a hostel that a friend had recommended that I could stay there for 3 days. I went there only to be told it's fully booked. So I'm like, damn, what do I do now? Looked at the clock and I thought, well, I've got no time to find an accommodation because the first semi-final's about to tip. So I picked up my bag and I just went straight to the arena. And I remember I came out from the tube. I was still underground. I could hear noise like you wouldn't believe. And I'm like, what the hell's going on up there? Is there a riot or something? So I come upstairs and I'm coming up the escalators and all I could see was a sea of green and white. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, what is this? Are these hooligans? They were Panathinaikos fans and they were so passionate. And I thought, wow, if that's what they're doing outside, what are they going to be doing inside the stadium? Well, that was a totally different experience, Niall, I'll tell you. The atmosphere inside was just unbelievable. I'd never seen anything quite like it. And obviously in 96, Dominique was playing for Panathinaikos. So again, it kind of completed the full circle for me, having seen him play for the NBA with Atlanta 4 years previously to then playing for a European powerhouse. And obviously he led the team to their first ever EuroLeague title. And I thought, that's it. I'm going to follow Panathinaikos from here on in. I liked the way they played and some of their Greek players were solid. And I just loved the game.
Well, that's the thing. The NBA is wonderful. I love the NBA. I'm a Celtics fan for life. The BBL is great, but it's the European basketball. It just has this fanaticism about it. The fans, the atmosphere. This is why I've always loved when British teams have played in Europe, and you either get a chance to go to one of the European games, or their fans come to a game here in the UK. It's just amazing the atmosphere that these fans make it. And of course, Panathinaikos have probably some of the most passionate fans in basketball.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, all you got to do is go to the Athens derby against Olympiacos, and you see they just want the blood of the opposition. It is just crazy. I remember taking my wife to once a EuroLeague derby with Olympiacos and Panathinaikos, and she couldn't believe what was going on. She kept holding onto my hand and squeezing it tighter and tighter. She thought she was going to get attacked. It's crazy. But that's the difference between the NBA and European leagues. I guess the NBA is more corporate, more bums on seats and the razzmatazz and the, cheerleaders and the popcorn and the beer and what have you. Whereas in the European, it's all about structured basketball and the excitement up and down.
Yeah, I mean, the fans are allowed to cheer, aren't they? They're allowed to, not constantly being interrupted by music and what have you. They're allowed to make as much noise as they want for the entire game. I mean, I went to where is it? Leon, to an Asvel game in EuroLeague last November, and of course it's only a small venue, 5,500, but the atmosphere is just amazing. There's just nothing like it elsewhere outside.
It's like every possession is do or die.
Yeah,
and that's European basketball is all about.
Now,
they lay their heart on the line. It's a fantastic product.
We are going to skip forward a year from 96 to 97 because there's a TV series on at the moment on Netflix. Something about Michael Jordan and the Bulls.
Dance,
I think that's what it's called, yes. And a certain photographer saw himself in episode 1.
Niall, it was unreal. I had to pause, rewind, and watch again. I thought, is that me? Skinny version of myself 20 odd years ago. I couldn't believe myself seeing myself in the first episode. But there I was.
Amazing.
It was unreal. And again, it was a no-brainer when I found out that because the McDonald's Championships was basically based on the champions of the various continents. And so the previous season, I was hoping the Bulls would win because that would mean they would have to play in the McDonald's. And when they did, I thought, right, I can't wait to apply for a credential. And, and by then I knew Paris because obviously I'd been there the year before. It was the same arena. So I knew the ins and outs of flying and traveling and hotels, what have you. So for me, it was like, gotta go. And by then there was a weekly newspaper called Slam Dunk.
Yes, another one I remember fondly.
Yep, and so I managed to align myself with them and provide coverage from that event because I knew trying to get a credential for that off my own name, even though I've been only doing it for 8 years, would have been quite difficult because obviously Michael's in town. Every media this side of the pond, everyone's going to try and get a pass. So luckily for me, I managed to get Slam Dunk on board, and I went across, and it was just unreal.
How close to the court did you get?
Well, I didn't get. They had to allocate the seating for the court side on a per game basis, and for Michael's the first game, I didn't get a spot court side, and I was gutted because I thought, oh man, I'm not going to get to shoot him playing basketball. But look at the gods, I managed to get myself a spot for the final, and I thought, you know what, I don't care now. They're in the final, they're playing Olympiacos, and I'm going to be shooting that darn game. And I was so happy, absolutely made up. And I was facing the Olympiacos bench, and it was a great experience.
And how close was Jordan from you during the game? How close did he get?
Oh, there was times I could reach out and touch his sneakers, and it was just, I was in awe, to be honest, Niall, because here's a guy that, I mean, I'm a Celtics fan through and through, but you've got game recognize his game, and Jordan is Jordan, and it doesn't matter which team you support, you've got to recognize what he did for the game. And at times I thought to myself, I need to put my camera down and just watch this guy play ball, because when I'm in my photography mode, it's difficult because all I'm seeing is what I see through the camera. So I'm not seeing what's behind me, what's in front, whatever, in the crowd or whatever. I'm only seeing what's in my viewfinder. And at times I thought, you know what, I want to soak in this atmosphere. The 15,000 Parisian fans. I want to see Coach Jackson. I want to see Tony Kukoc, Michael Jordan. And it was difficult. But I kept at it. I focused on the job, pardon the pun. And I think I came out with a few images to this day that are some of my best images. And the fact that they happen to be of Michael, well, that's an even added bonus. Because for me, it was one of those where, yeah, it's okay for the NBA photographers because they probably get to see him, half a dozen times in the season. But for a little Deepdale boy who's travelled all the way to Paris, this is probably the only time he'll get to see Michael. And what a time, because he was in his prime. And to see what he did in Paris and then to see that season play out and then ended up winning the title again, for me, I was so proud of myself, thinking you've just documented history right there.
Did any of those shots end up in the following issue of Slam Dunk?
Yeah, so...
How did you get the film? How did they get it? Because obviously we're talking pre-digital, pre-internet.
Yes,
how did you get that back to the people at Slam Dunk?
Right, so what I did was I got the first flight out of Paris back to Manchester, and the very next day I went in. By then, thankfully, there were some labs that were doing 1 hour prints. So I managed to get, I think I had 12 rolls, and 12 rolls of colour back then. Because by 97, I'd given up on film, black and white. I thought, I've done my black and white apprenticeship, let's move on to colour. And I took 12 rolls with me, and I took 12 rolls to the lab. They processed them for me in an hour, and I had prints and the negs. And what I did was, I sent all the pictures, all the prints, by Royal Mail special delivery to the editor of Slam Dunk. And then he basically did what he had to do. I think he scanned them for publication. And then that Friday, because I remember the paper used to come out every Friday, and by that Friday, there were my pictures in that edition of Slam Dunk.
Must have been a surreal feeling.
That was, because that is the only time I've gone out to every newsagent in Preston and bought every copy of Slam Dunk. I think I've got about 7 or 8 copies of that particular edition. Well, because Michael was in it.
Yeah.
Michael was in it, and it was my work. And at that time, that was the only publication in the UK that actually did anything decent in terms of coverage from that event. So for me, it was a huge deal.
Cool.
While I'm speaking to you, I've managed to pull one out. Here we go, week ending October 25th, 1997.
All right, well, we'll make sure we get that scanned, and when this podcast comes out, you're going to be posting that on social media, okay?
No problem, sir. You got a deal there.
We've talked BBL, we've talked NBA, we've talked EuroLeague. Now, you, sir, if there's a Eurobasket, you always seem to be there, don't you?
Yeah, I've done 10 Eurobaskets starting from 99 onwards. I've not missed one since 99.
Do you get like a medal or something for that?
I don't know. I think you've got to ask John Atkinson, because I think he's done more than me. He's probably done about 18 or 19. He always reminds me from time to time, telling me that I'm the young puppy.
So you obviously would have done Eurobaskets. Obviously, the majority early ones would have been without GB.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first Eurobasket you went to where GB were involved, either men or women?
2009, Eurobasket Poland. And they'd qualified off their own back. So this is before the Olympics. And they played in Warsaw in Poland in that first group phase. They played in a converted ice hockey stadium, I believe, because they didn't have a basketball Pacific Arena in Warsaw. And it was a great experience to see my nation represented in a European competition. And although we didn't win any games, I'm sure we ran Spain very close. I remember that game. We came back from like 20 odd down, and we were like 4 points away from tying the score with a couple of minutes to go, and we had a few dodgy calls. But it was a tough baptism of fire, because we had Slovenia, who reached the semi-finals. We had Spain, who went all the way to win the whole thing, and then we had Serbia. So we had 3 European powerhouses in our group, and I like to say we competed with all 3, but at the end of the day, our experience showed, and we couldn't get a win and couldn't progress.
And then, obviously, I don't want to shoot too far forward, but from Eurobasket, because obviously the thing about GB was qualifying for London 2012.
Yeah.
What was it like to be able to cover Olympics in your home country?
It was surreal. I kid you not. I had tried to apply for 2004 games in Athens
Mhm.
and Beijing in 2008. Unfortunately, the credentialing procedure is different when it comes to the Olympics in that the IOC want to know whether your country is participating in the sport that you want to cover. So for me, if GB weren't playing basketball at the Athens game, then why am I bothering applying? So I got turned down. And
Mm.
the good thing with the IOC was you could actually ask them for feedback. So I did. I asked them, why did I get rejected? And they told me. And to see that it was, in my back garden, so to speak, it's in London, it's happening. And I thought, you know what, finally, I've got a good chance of covering something that I've always wanted to do. And I applied and I got in. And as they say, the rest is history. It was just a totally awesome experience. And I'm sat courtside with some of the world's best photographers. Simple as the best of the best. Some of these guys I've grown up idolizing. I look at their books, the magazines, and all I do is look at the little byline underneath each picture. Photo by so and so, so and so. And it was just a dream that I thought I'd never meet these people in real life. And here I am, 2012, and I'm sharing the same baseline with some of these, best photographers in the world. And it was just like the athletes, just like you've got to be the best to play at the Olympics. You've got to be the best in what you do away from the playing surface. So photographers, you've got to be the best photographers to cover the Olympics, the best commentators. And so for me, I thought, you know what, I've actually made it. I'm about to cross off one of the things on my bucket list.
Did you get a chance to talk to any of these guys?
The photographers?
Mm.
Yeah, a couple of them. But again, I was still a little shy kid, I guess, back then, in that I was like, oh my God, that's so-and-so. Just go and say hello to him. And so I, mustered enough courage to go up to them, because normally I'm really shy. And I thought, no, they don't want to talk to me. But they were quite outgoing, and, they would say hello back. And yeah, it was great.
It's quite funny because we do work in the media. It's like people think, oh, we just want to meet all the players, what have you. But you want to meet your peers. You want to meet. It's like that time when the Celtics were over, 2-3 years ago. I wanted to meet Mike Gorman, the
Yeah.
Celtics broadcaster. I had to meet him, and thankfully, one of the best things ever was he gave me an interview. It was so great for you to see some of the photographers that you've seen their work over the years. It's just must be just amazing.
It was, because back then when I first picked up a camera to shoot basketball, all I would ever see was these pictures in glossy magazines. And I'm thinking, wow, look at these pictures of these athletes slam dunking and taking it to the rack. And I used to just look at the byline and say, right, that's been taken by Nathaniel Butler. That's been taken by Andy Bernstein. And those names stuck in my mind all those years ago. And fast forward 15, 20 years down the line, and I'm actually talking to them, sharing the same baseline with them, having a laugh and a joke with them. And I'm thinking, wow, I wouldn't have thought that 20 years ago.
You probably never wanted it to end, did you?
No, not at all. I mean, it was just a fun event to cover. I was gutted that, the team didn't do as well as they could have done. Because I'm passionate about my sport, about my country. And every time I see my country play, I want them to win. And so I left a bit dejected from the results point of view that we didn't do as well as we could have. But from a personal career point of view, I thought, wow, because not many people are privileged to go and cover an Olympic Games. I mean, how many people can say that?
Yeah, because as you pointed out with Athens and Beijing, it's an incredibly hard process.
Exactly. And like I said earlier on in this conversation, I'm just a little Deepdale boy. I have no business being sat courtside at an Olympic final shooting Kobe against Gasol. Looking back now, it still gives me goosebumps to think I actually did that.
Yeah, I just want to just go back a tiny bit. Of course, you would have been in Manchester for the USA game because that was pre-Olympics.
Yeah.
What was that like? Because obviously that, as you well know, that team, the USA team, was just loaded.
That team was stacked 1 through 12, and I was sat no more than a couple of meters away from the USA bench. I could reach out and touch Kobe, Carmelo, Durant, LeBron. And that was the first time I've seen all 12 together like that in that setting. And I looked at them and I thought, wow, just wow. And even the players that weren't on the court, the way they were just sat there and dissecting the game and yelling to their teammates on court, and it was a different perspective that I'd never seen before. And to be in their company was just awesome. Absolutely brilliant.
Right. Well, I'm afraid I'm going to take you away from that wonderful moment now. Just sort of get you back to the BBL, because you've done everything. But the BBL, obviously, from start to finish, you're there. Whether you're doing headshots at the start of the season or celebration shots at the end of it, you are there from start to finish, going to games, traveling up and down the country. You know, you put a lot of miles in during the season. I just want to talk about, let's just say, we'll go back to the cup final, because we only had cup finals this year. The cup final, trophy final. What's a normal day for you when you go? Because I can remember being in Birmingham back in January and saying to you the night before, "Oh, what time you could be at the arena tomorrow?" And you're like 7 or 8, and I'm like, "I'll see you at 11." Why have you got to be there so early? What needs to be done before everything gets underway? Because the first game's usually about 1 o'clock, isn't it?
Yeah. So for me, it starts way before the day of the finals. When I'm at home in the office, I draw up a master plan of what I need to achieve from that particular event. And one of the main things I go through in my mind is whether I need to put up any remote cameras. So these are the ones that you operate without actually being behind them. Do I need to put one in the catwalk looking down? Do I need to put one behind the glass in the backboard? And that then determines whether I need to be there at silly o'clock, or do I just show up, 2 hours before the game? And we take the cup final, for example. So for that one, in the Birmingham's NIA, they've got the catwalks above the court. Now, they don't like anyone to go up there when the crowd is in the arena for health and safety, obviously. So that kind of limits the amount of time I've got to get up there and set up my camera, test it, make sure everything's firing as it should. So more often than not, I'm there 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, way before anybody else is even out of bed. Poor Jane's got to drag along with me. And we walk in and we see everybody busy, setting the court up, putting down the markings, getting the baskets in position. And I'm waiting for the go-ahead from the management for somebody to take me up to the catwalk. And I set my camera up, and then by the time I've come back down, it's probably, I would say, about half an hour, maybe an hour before the doors are open to the public.
And let's just point out, you don't like heights, do you?
No, I'm very scared of heights, but it's one of those where I've got to get that perfect shot. I've got to get a shot that nobody else is going to get on the day. And so I've got to put the work in. So whether it's going up a catwalk and trying not to look down, but I have to, or trying to climb a ladder to put a camera behind the basket, I'm not comfortable with doing it, but I have to do it to give the league, to give the viewer, whoever's watching, looking at the website or in a program, give them something different, the perspective of the game from a different angle. Because everybody's used to seeing the same shots from, sat down courtside and what have you. But for me, it's always about giving the viewer something different to look at.
So for the last few years, the BBL's used the 3 venues in Birmingham, Glasgow, and obviously the O2 in London. Of those 3, which is your favourite to work at? And that can be anything. That can be just the setup, or that can be the backdrop for your pictures.
I like the O2 because guaranteed in London you'll get a decent crowd. Mm-hmm. And that's one of my biggest bugbears, is having pictures with little or no crowd in the back. Because the viewer's eyes most often are just drawn to the empty seats in the picture. Mm. And so it doesn't matter what great picture of somebody slam dunking or whatever you can capture. If there's empty seats in the background, it kind of takes away from that feel.
Because it's got seating all 4 sides, isn't it? So
exactly. And so with the O2, you know that it's going to be half decent crowd-wise. And the lighting at the O2 is NBA level. It is an NBA level arena. And so for me, I don't have to worry about the technical aspects of a stadium, whether it's going to be bright enough for me or if it's going to be easy to get to and stuff like that. I like the O2 amongst the other arenas.
Because that brings me on to another topic then, because you talk about lighting. What venue, and you don't have to answer this, has been an absolute nightmare for you to photograph? I've got one in my head, which I'm hoping you're going to say it, But
I'm
I'm
not
going to see
gonna
what you're
take
going to say.
anything away from the team because the team was fantastic, but the venue was just a dire place to shoot in, and that venue was a Northgate Arena.
Yes, that was what I was thinking of.
Was it?
Yes.
Classic. And you just walk in and you see the yellow tungsten lighting, and I'm thinking, geez, no, please. I don't want to shoot in here because I'm not going to get anything. And obviously, back then, when they used to play the Northgate, the cameras weren't advanced enough. So maybe now I could go back and get something decent from there. But back then, with the cameras I had, I couldn't get anything for love nor money from the Northgate. And I thought, what am I doing here? There was pointless shooting color rolls from the Northgate because the tungsten lighting would just give this horrible yellow cast all over the images. Black and white you might get away with, but even then I was like, nah, I hate it. Absolutely hated it.
And of course, their new venue must be great to take pictures in.
It's a lot better. I mean, it's still a bit dark from my perspective, but given the choice, I'd take Ellesmere Port every day, all day.
Brilliant. And let's just keep on the BBL theme. What's your favourite venue in the league to photograph at?
Right now? Wow. It's a toss-up. Can I go for two?
Yeah, sure, of course you can. It's your podcast.
Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Leicester Arena, Morningside Arena, and the new Newcastle one. But then again, I'm biased because I'm going purely from the lighting perspective. Because the lighting.
Well, no, you're a photographer, so lighting
Yeah.
is a key aspect for you.
Absolutely.
Okay, then. And let's talk about BBL venues that maybe are obviously no more or no longer used. Have you got a favourite that you miss photographing at?
Yeah, hands down, the 9X Arena, Manchester Evening News Arena, or whatever it is they call it these days. That was my nearest arena back in the day, and I used to be the official Giants photographer back in the late 90s, and I used to go there almost weekly, near it like the back of my hand, and the lighting was good, everything was just perfect. I missed that stadium. And so when the USA team played there prior to the Olympics, it was a blast from the past. It was almost like, oh my God, they're playing it in the arena. Fantastic. Couldn't wait to get back inside there.
You were at, obviously, the biggest moment in the BBL ever, in my opinion. The 99 title decider between the Manchester Giants and the Sheffield Sharks. What are your memories of that afternoon?
It was a fantastic day for British basketball. It was packed stadium. It was live on television. It was a Good Friday. 15,000 fans in the arena, and it went down to the single game. Winner takes all. Came down to the single shot. And for me, I remember that game clearly because Terrell Myers hit that shot and he scored it at the other side from where I was sat. But the first thing he did was he scored and he came running towards me in my direction. And so I was best placed to capture that celebration. And I've often said that for me, especially in sports photography, sometimes it's not about the action, but the reaction. The emotions, the dejections, the celebrations. Sure, anybody can take a decent shot of a dunk, whatever, but sometimes it isn't about that. It's about the human endeavor. It's about the looks on people's faces, people in the crowd with their hands on their hips or on their face or whatever. And I remember him running towards me and towards his teammates, and they were hugging almost near the Giants bench, and I was there taking the shots, and I was like, wow. I was gutted, obviously, for the Giants because I wanted Nick Nurse to win a title with them. I mean, they did afterwards when it became the Dairy Lee Dunkers Championship. But back then, when it was just a single league format, I really wanted that team to win because that team was stacked. They had Tony Holly, Tony Dorsey, my good friend Jason Swain was in that squad. And to see that they came within a whisker of winning, it will remain with me for the rest of my days. And that was actually the first game that I had a picture published for the very first time in a national newspaper. The Independent ran a picture of the team with the trophy the day after in the paper. And again, that was when I was still shooting film. So the story goes, the moment that game finished, I legged it to the Arndale Centre, which was still open, found one of these snappy snap shops, and said to the guy, I said, look, mate, I just want the film processing. Don't want prints, just want the negative. And he looked at me like, what on earth is this guy doing? So I explained to him, I showed him my press pass. I said, listen, I'm a photographer. I just need the raw processing. And I need it done like in the next half hour. Could you do that? So I slipped him another $5 for it. And he gave me the raw process in about 20 minutes. Legged it back into my little Fiesta I had, I think, at the time. Bombed it down the M61, got home to Preston, scanned in a few images on my old film scanner and emailed them over to the independent picture desk. Didn't think much about it because back then basketball wasn't still getting that much of publicity, to be honest. But I sent the pictures through anyway. And the very next morning, like I normally do after big events, I went into the newsagents, looked at every single paper, and lo and behold, the Independent had a picture. But not only that, they had my name underneath it. Well, that was me, gone. Again, I went out and bought 6 or 7 copies of the Independent, and I'm like on cloud 9. You know, my first ever published picture in a national newspaper, and what a game to get the picture from. I remember it clearly.
It's just one of those amazing things. I was there purely as a fan, and I'm so glad that I was. I just got to enjoy because I remember coming home and then watching. It was on Sky, so in Cador and Routledge. Coming home when I got home because I stayed overnight, come home the following day and watching it all over again.
Yeah. And I've watched it many. I mean, it's one of those games that frequently pops up on YouTube and what have you, and I see myself there. I am stood in the corner, and I'm thinking, "Crikey, I'm some skinny Jimmy right there." 20 odd years ago, crazy times.
Because even on the clip, the little 30-second clip that goes around with the Myers basket and the celebrations, there you are. We can see you in the background.
Yeah. And it just brings a smile to my face to know that I was there at the time, and it was a historical moment. Not just for Sheffield, but for the league and for the sport in general.
The Hoops and Hockey Podcast.
We'll just bring on to final few questions, Mansoor. Is there anything you still would like to cover?
I guess every photographer's dream is to cover the biggest events, and obviously I've done the World Cups, I've done the Eurobaskets, and I've done the Olympics. I guess the only other thing for me to do, this from a personal perspective, would be like an NBA Finals game or an NBA All-Star game. But that's purely just to cross it off my own personal bucket list. Yeah, just to say I've done it. But those games, trust me, are like gold dust. I mean, to get a credential for those, forget it.
What has been your favourite event, if you can pick one to cover?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'd say one of the favourite ones was seeing a very, very young LeBron James in his last high school game before he went pro. So that would have been 2003. He was playing in what was called the Jordan Capital Classic. And he was playing against Chris Paul, and he was also a high school senior. And to see them as youngsters and to see where they are now, it's like, wow. Again, I've just documented history right there.
Yeah.
And it was a great game. I remember that game because we had Carmelo Anthony in the crowd. We had Michael Jordan sat in one of the suites with Patrick Ewing, Warren Sapp. We had Spike Lee in attendance. We had the late, great Red Auerbach in the stands. It was a game that everybody in America wanted to watch because here we had a high school phenom in LeBron James. Everybody's talking about him, and they all wanted to see if he could back it up. And I'd seen a few clips here and there and what have you, and I had no idea how good this kid was. And when I was there courtside at the Verizon Center in Washington, D.C., I was like, wow, this kid's going to be all right. He scored at ease. He was like a very young Michael Jordan in that respect. And now when I look back at, the NBA films of him with the Cleveland Cavaliers and Miami Heat, and look back and think, crikey, I shot his last game as a high school senior. And now look where he is. And stuff like that leaves an impression on me, you see, because I'm not a big timer. I'm not getting images. I'm not working for the NBA. I'm just a little guy from Preston trying to do something good in life. And to see that I've mingled with some of the world's best athletes, it's a very humbling experience.
Brings me on to another thing. Obviously, being around British basketball so long, you must have seen some of our current GB players or even just recently former GB players when they're younger. I've seen them pretty much throughout their careers.
Wow.
Is there anyone that sort of you saw as a one of the women's or the men that you saw as a youngster, and then you've seen their entire career until now? Is anyone?
Yeah, I would say so. I'd say there was two. From the men's side, I'd say it was Drew Sullivan,
Mm-hmm.
and from the women's, it's Joe Leadham. And with Drew, it was a case of I was commissioned to be the official photographer for the. Back then, they used to have these all-star camps in Loughborough. They were sponsored by Adidas, and it was a spin-off from the ones they used to have in the States called the ABCD camps. Well, they had the equivalent in the UK called the ABC camps, sponsored by Adidas. And Drew was lucky enough to be selected one of the few British guys to play in the European All-Star camp in Loughborough. And they had all these up-and-coming European stars. Off one was a certain Tony Parker. Drew Sullivan went up against the best of the best in Europe, and I thought, you know what, this kid's going to be all right. And you got to remember, he was just coming off Villanova and what have you, and he's starting his pro career. He was only like 18 years old, I think. And he's one guy that I've kind of documented from start to finish. And then on the women's side, Jo Leadham. Well, I've seen her play when she was playing for Ellesmere Port Panthers back in 2002, I think it was. She was just a young 13, 14-year-old schoolgirl. And again, I have this knack of seeing athletes and I think, yeah, they're going to be okay. Yeah. Given the right environment and the right nurturing, I think they're going to be superstars. And I wasn't wrong with her either. And I've followed her career all the way through until to this date. And, for me, it's a very proud achievement because I love building relationships with players. It's not just about showing up to an event, taking my camera out, snap, and then go home. It's about building relationships. It's about, letting these players have a visual history of their career.
And of course, you've picked two players who've been absolute stalwarts for the British game.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've been blessed in that these two, I can say I've seen them since day one all the way through to the end. And what a catalogue of visual memories they've got now through my lens that they could look back in 15, 20 years and tell their kids and tell their grandkids that their dad, their mother used to be such a fantastic player. And for me, that's really humbling that, I'm a part of that journey for them.
The Hoops and Hockey Podcast.
Now, obviously, we've been talking, Mansoor, through this, how you sitting courtside. There must have been some occasions where either you've come close to being hit or someone's levelled you.
In the BBL, no less. And I think I mentioned the 9X Arena before. Well, it was a game in 97, if I remember correctly. I was sat courtside and at the 9X Arena, Manchester. I think they were playing Thames Valley Tigers. And there was a loose ball. I'd like to say John McCord batted it off the ring. And two giants by the names of Irish and Tresvant went running after the loose ball. Well, game over because they actually landed on top of me. Colin Irish isn't a small dude, Niall.
No.
6'9", built as a, proverbial.
Yes.
My mind's like, get out of the way. But my body's like, you're too slow, mate. It's too late. And they, boom, landed on top of me. And next thing you know, you look up into the gods and they had this big jumbotron. And they used to have the in-arena camera feed. And next thing you know, they're replaying the highlights. And all you can see is me going, oh no, my hand's going up in the air, my leg's coming out underneath me. And these two big guys just boom on top of me. And I'm like, ouch. But to their credit, when they got back up, they checked up on me and, are you okay? Are you all right? Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, carry on. You play. Don't worry about me. But tell you what, the next morning I did feel it. My ribs. Oh, my ribs.
Well, I have to ask, obviously, the most important question here. Was the camera okay?
You know what? I can't even remember. All I remember was getting flattened. And next thing I know, I thought, please don't show this on the big screen. It's too embarrassing.
Too late.
In fact, that game, I actually stayed behind the arena for another 20 minutes just to make sure that when I left the arena, nobody would look at me and just giggle.
Do you know if footage still exists of that at all? Or is it just one of those sort of live streams that's never?
I think it was just a live thing in the in-house camera. So I'm glad it wasn't broadcasted or anything. So yeah, I'm safe with that one.
Now, while we're on this topic, I'm going to talk on to something else where you've had some disaster areas. Travel. Now, you've been to Eurobaskets, World Cups, you've been NBA games. You talked about your hostel earlier. You've had some stories, haven't you, when you tried to stay somewhere for an event and you've ended up sleeping on the floor or the accommodation was nothing like what it's supposed to be. Have you got any of those you want to share with us?
2013 EuroLeague Final Four. We were blessed on the back of the Olympic Games that the EuroLeague decided to come and play their showpiece event at the O2. And again, I was blessed to be one of the official photographers. And after the final, which was Olympiacos Real Madrid, one of my assignments was to cover the press conference. So that went on for quite a long time because certain Olympiacos players gate crashed the press conference and started spraying the coach and Spanoulis with water. So the press conference had to be halted for 5 or 10 minutes while they cleaned up the mess. And as a result of that, by the time I'd finished, they'd locked up everything. The arena was literally empty. There was nobody around. I had to ask security to let me into the room so I could get my equipment and my bags. And when I looked at the clock, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, 2:30, I would say. And when I got to the North Greenwich tube stop, obviously there was no tubes running at that time, just a handful of buses. And I realised that I'd left my jacket in the arena. And there was no way I could go back in the arena because everything was locked down. And I'm like, flip. Because the jacket had the wallet, had my money and everything. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do now? It had my key card for the hotel room. I was staying in Barking, in the Premier Inn in Barking, would you believe? So I'm like, flip, how am I going to get from here to Barking without A, no money, and B, no key card to get into my room? And I've got no ID to show at the hotel to say that I'm actually staying at the hotel. And I'm like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And I'm thinking, I'm one of the official photographers. I shouldn't have to go through this nonsense. Why is this happening to me? And I manned up and I actually walked from Greenwich all the way to Stratford, where a certain John Hobbs was staying. And obviously he was covering the event for Talk Basket. And I messaged him. I said, listen, John, I'm really sorry, mate, but can I sleep on your hotel room floor? I can't get back to my hotel. And, bless him, he said, yeah, no worries, man, come on in. So it must have been about 3:30. I came in and I just crashed on the floor and then woke up early morning and went all the way back to the arena and got all my stuff. My jacket was still there, thank God. And then managed to get to the hotel, got my stuff checked out. And it didn't get any better for me because by the time I got back to Euston to catch my train back to Preston, I missed it by literally no more than 5 seconds. I could actually see the train on the platform and it's just about to depart and I'm like running after it. And you can imagine I've got one suitcase full of camera gear, one suitcase full of personal effects. I've got a rucksack on my back. I'm trying to run as fast as I can. Nope, legs couldn't get any faster. And I missed that train. And then I had to just blag my way through the next train to get back home. And so that sticks in my mind.
You've had some accommodation issues when you stayed abroad as well for is it Eurobaskets, when you've turned up to a property that's not what was advertised?
Oh, the most recent one, 2017, Eurobasket, Istanbul. So I was staying in one of the media hotels for the group stage where GB were. Once they got knocked out, the thing with the Eurobasket is I can't foresee when GB are going to progress, when they're going to get knocked out. So for me, I've got to book for the whole event. So the flights, hotels. So I booked media hotel for the group stage and I booked an Airbnb for the final round because they were playing that in a different arena on the other side of Istanbul. And so when GB got knocked out and they went back home, I carried on all the way to the final. And I packed up, went to the next hotel/apartment. And I get there and I'm thinking, right, well, this doesn't look like what I'm seeing on Airbnb. But that's okay. I'll give it a shot. Next thing I know, I'm in bed, and there's cockroaches, and there's these maggots and worms, and I'm thinking, no, I can't be sleeping on no bed that's infested with. I need something a bit more better than this. And so I get in touch with this host. He comes down, and he can't speak a word of English. I can't speak Turkish, so he's using Google Translate, and I'm just saying, look, I want out of here, and I want my money back. And he's like, no, I can't do that. And anyway, it took about 2 hours of arguing with this elderly Turkish chap. And in the end, he said, right, okay, no problem. I'll refund you. And then I packed all my stuff. I'm sat in a Burger King upstairs whilst on my laptop searching for apartments. The problem there was all the other teams that had progressed to the knockout rounds, their fans were also looking for apartments on that side of Istanbul. It was a race to see who could bag a room cheap enough to watch the final round. Luckily for me, I managed to find one. I think it was about 400 quid for the 6 nights. I think 7 nights I was there. And it was a lot cleaner. It had AC and there was no cockroaches. So I was pleased.
Pleased or relieved?
A bit of both, I think, to be honest. It's difficult, isn't it? When you go abroad, you have no idea what you're going to be met with. Different cultures, different environments. Some of the countries I've been to, you can't speak the language. So it's hard to kind of know what you're going to get yourself in for. Luckily for me, I'd been to Istanbul before. So I kind of knew the lay of the land. And so that kind of helped me out a bit as well. So yeah, quite fortunate.
But you've also had some good trips as well, because obviously I was there with you and a few others. Luxembourg 2016, the GB last game of the qualifying. Luxembourg, that was an amazing trip. We stayed this hotel right in the city centre. You suggested it. We all looked at the booking for, that's a dodgy area in Luxembourg. Turned out to be absolutely lovely, didn't it?
It was probably one of the only times where the UK basketball media fraternity kind of stayed together in the same hotel and did everything together. It was one of the most fondest memories I have, hiring a bike and just, we had a great tour guide as well, didn't we?
My friend Manny.
Yeah, and he took us around and it was a wonderful little city. I thoroughly enjoyed that. And now apparently the public transport, is now free.
Yeah. If GB ever go back to Luxembourg, we could get on the bus or the tram, because the tram was still being built when we went there.
That's right. Yeah.
But that's an amazing trip because we had such a wonderful time. But GB lost the game.
You know what? It was tinged with sadness because they lost the game, but they still qualified for the Eurobasket. And
that was a bizarre feeling, wasn't it?
It was a very bizarre feeling, and I think that loss kind of didn't help us with the seedings when it came to the draw. But I remember going into the locker room after the game, and there were grown men there crying their eyes out, and you think to yourself, well, okay, you've lost the game, but you've qualified, and end of the day, that's the ultimate ambition, just to qualify for the major championship. But these guys, win or lose, it means a lot to them. And to see some of I won't name names, but there were some guys there with tears, and I felt for them. I really did.
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful trip. I'm trying to think, who was the coach at the time? Was it Joe Prunty, wasn't it?
Yeah, with Joe Prunty.
Yeah, we're going on a tour around the middle of Luxembourg City. Suddenly, there's Joe Prunty. Stops to talk
That's right.
to Mansour. Has a good old chat.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that because, Joe Prunty is a serious professional, and as a photographer, I always try to keep out of the way of players, coaches, because my role, I know what my role is. It's not to be in their face and pop, taking pictures 10 to the dozen. My role is just to stay out of the way, stay, invisible if I can, and just document the moment when I think it's right. And with Joe, when we were walking around and he's there, he's like, "Can I have a picture with you?" I was like, "What? You want a picture with me? Surely it should be the other way around." But Joe was a great guy. So was the other guys walking around. It was an experience that I'll never forget.
Loved that GB team because obviously I worked with them when they were playing the home qualifiers at the Copper Box, and they were just such a great bunch of guys at that time. And obviously Joe was a really nice guy to work with. I do miss Joe being around the GB setup.
Absolutely, yeah. Those 3 games at the Copper Box were good games. Those 3 games laid the foundation for us qualifying for 2017 Eurobasket. that Hungary team was a tough team. And we
Yeah.
took care of Macedonia, we took care of Luxembourg at home, and then I think we beat Macedonia away, didn't we? But lost to Luxembourg.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, lost that. I mean, but that was a great atmosphere in there.
Oh, in Luxembourg, yeah.
Oh, the game was just amazing. But they
arena?
deserved to win. They wanted that game and they got it.
Oh, they did, and they got it, yeah. And do you remember the name of the arena? Was it Le Coq?
The Coq or the Coq. I've still got my cup because you had to pay €1 deposit and any drinks.
Oh, yes.
And you allow, if you didn't want to get your money back, you can keep the cup. So I've still got my cup. Yeah, my memento from that trip. It was a wonderful time. It's great to be around, GB at the time because obviously I was covering. Who was covering? Oh, Chris Egerton. That was it. I was covering for Chris because Chris wasn't around. Right, random questions. I remember you telling me this, so I've got to ask you this question because I know you want to talk about it. You've been in magazines, you've been on websites, you've been in newspapers. You've also been on a billboard. Tell me.
So me and the missus, right? We just random shopping trip out to the Trafford Centre, and we've just finished, and we thought, right, let's just go for our favourite kebab in the Curry Mile in Rusholme. So we drove from the Trafford Centre and we're driving around, and next thing I see is this massive billboard, and it's advertising the forthcoming USA GB men's basketball game and obviously the women's game as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't believe it. I slammed on. I think Jane actually went as close to the dash as possible without realising what's happening. And I looked at it and I thought, hold on a second. They're my pictures. No, it can't be. No, they are. They're my pictures. So I stopped and I got out and I looked at them, and Jane's like, what on earth are you doing? I said, Jane, these are my pictures that they've just got on a billboard advertising this game. And she's like, oh, wow. So for the next hour, all we did was we drove around Manchester looking for billboards with my work on so I could take some pictures of it.
The most important question here is, did you get that kebab?
We did, and I tell you what, it tasted beautiful because on the back of that, I was buzzing because I've never had my work published on a billboard.
Uh-huh.
You know how big they are, and it was just wow.
Oh, yes.
I think there was a picture of Lual and a picture of Joe Leadham from the GB side that were mine. And I couldn't care less who the pictures were of. The fact that they were pictures I had taken that were being used to publicise the event, it made my day.
Now, here's something else I got to ask you about because you mentioned it to me, and it's one of those moments I'm thinking, I have no idea what this story is going to be. Drying a roll of film in a Swiss toilet restroom.
Oh my God. So that would have been, let's see. Yeah, it would have been the last year of me shooting film, so 2001.
Mm-hmm.
England were playing Switzerland in a little town called Porrentruy in Switzerland. And I have no idea why I decided, but I decided to take my whole house with me. So I took my scanner, my laptop, my developing gear, all my chemicals. I took everything with me. And at half time of the game, it was a European, I like to say it was a Eurobasket 2003 qualifier with Switzerland. And at half time, I thought, right, I've got 2 rolls that I've fully used up. I'm going to go and get these developed. And obviously, by 2000s, I was developing my own color film as well as black and white. And I went in the men's room, and there I was developing the film away. And by the time halftime buzzer sounded, I'd already finished developing the roll. All I had to do was dry it. Well, I had a hairdryer with me as well. Problem was, people coming into the bathroom wanting to use the toilets and what have you. All they could see was this big bald-headed dude with a hairdryer in his hand. They couldn't see the negative in front of me. All they could see was a hairdryer, and looked at me and thinking, why is he using a hairdryer when he's bald? And then when they came round and saw the fact that I had a long roll of colour film that was drying on the spot, they thought, okay. And the funny story is, a couple of them actually, at the end of the game, came round to where I was sat and had a look at exactly what it was I was doing because I had the whole scanning set up and everything on the media bench. But it's one of those stories that I remember to this day. Bald-headed dude with a hairdryer.
The Hoops and Hockey Podcast.
If you could have another role in basketball, just say for one day, you're not a photographer, you can be anything else in basketball, what would you like to do?
That's a very interesting question. I need some time to think about this one. This is a tough question right here. Wow. I would love to be a head coach for the day.
Who would you love to coach? Who would you love to coach? A team or players? Or
who would I love to coach?
I suppose not the Celtics.
No.
Panathinaikos in the derby. How about that?
That would be awesome because I'd get to go scream and shout and kick chairs and throw stuff on the court. Yeah, definitely.
Would you be like a Nabradovic?
10 times worse. I'll be cussing everybody out, cussing Spanoulis and whoever else is playing on the opposition. Yeah, I hate Olympiacos with a passion. Head coach for a day, coaching Panathinaikos and the Athens derby, packed out stadium, 18,000 in the Oaka. Yeah, give me that. I'll take that.
Right then, and then let's just finish this off. Obviously, hopefully you got many more years working the sport. But if you were to finish today and say, that's it, I don't want to do it anymore, what would be your favourite memories you'll take back? And that can either be like meeting someone or a particular game or going somewhere. What would be your favourite memories that you'll take away and say, I'm so glad I did that?
Well, the BBL, obviously, the early years, building relationships with players like Alan Cunningham, Colin Irish, Jason Swain, John Tresvant, the ones we've named before. Internationally, it'd have to be stuff like, McDonald's Championships that I've done, Michael Jordan, seeing the Dream Team play, the 2012 version, that is. One thing that does stick in my mind was when we did have the 98 European All-Star Camp, a certain Joe Bryant, who everybody knows is Kobe's dad, was actually in attendance, and he came and made a little presentation, did a little speech. And I had the opportunity to spend maybe a couple of hours with him, sat outside in one of the little gardens, and we were just chatting about basketball and life in general. And he just came across so humble. And this is like 98, where, Kobe was still trying to make his mark in the NBA. So, and to see him speak of his son in such glowing terms, it left an impression on me. So that's one of the memories I would take away with me as well. Because at the end of the day, that wasn't a professional environment. That was just a grassroots, camp. And it just happened to be there. And some of the stuff we chatted about, I still kind of put into my life's work today. So, yeah.
Are there any photographers still going from when you started? Or if you outlasted?
No. And that's the thing. Over the years, photographers came on the scene for maybe 2, 3 seasons, 4 seasons, and then they've just kind of gone by the wayside. And I guess I'm the last man standing. Since '89, I've been ever present at every year at a BBL event.
Just to put that in comparison, if you go 1989, you've still got Larry Bird and Magic Johnson playing, and Michael Jordan hadn't even won a championship.
Yeah.
That just shows you how long ago that was.
Yeah, that was way before the Dream Team ever played at Barcelona Olympics. It was, before the Redeem Team came along in '96. Certainly before the 2012 USA team. So, yeah, some longevity is that, Niall. You're starting to make me feel old, man. Come off it.
You've been around the game for a long time. If someone came up to you and said, Mansoor, I want to be a basketball photographer, what advice would you give them?
Niall, that's a great question. And what I would say is, don't be scared of dreaming too high. Reach for the stars. I remember when I first started, I had one camera and a very, very small lens. And my first game I went, and I was absolutely in awe of all these other photographers with their, 3 cameras and 6 lenses and what have you. And I thought, wow. but it didn't put me off, and I kept going, limited kit or not. I kept going and taking pictures and just building a portfolio. And with that, then I was able to get another camera, get 2 camera bodies, 3 lenses, 4 lenses, to the point now where I'm at now. So what I would say to the young generation coming through is, don't be scared of failing, because I failed so many times. But the thing with me was I was persistent, and every time I failed, I got back up and just carried on going. I mean, through all the stories I've just recalled, there were times where I got knocked back, like the Olympics in 2004, 2008, and not every application that I put in for a media pass was successful. So there is, from my point of view, failure as well. But I didn't let it deter me. I still kept fighting for, trying to be better, trying to learn. And obviously nowadays you've got the advent of the internet. You've got tools like YouTube and, online tutorials. I mean, I didn't have that when I was learning the ropes, so to speak. So it's a bit easier now. You just punch in how to be a sports photographer on the internet and you get all these videos. But don't be scared of dreaming big. Start local league. You don't need to aspire to go and shoot an NBA game. Just go to your local park. Take pictures of someone playing pickup ball, recreational ball, local league. You don't have to go and take pictures at a professional level before you can succeed. I think that's what my advice would be.
Right then. So we're going to bring it to an end.
Yeah.
Now, it's been an amazing journey for you, Mansoor. As you said, a little kid from Deepdale who wanted to play for Manchester United, ended up becoming a photographer, going on to cover so many events all around the world. You met your wife through the sport. Yeah. It's been an amazing 30 years. I just want to say, and it's been an absolute pleasure to know you for some of them. And I love working with you. We can make a great team. There's nothing like doing an article and knowing that the shot that I'm going to be using is by yourself, because you always let me know. The dream team.
Yeah, absolutely. Great collaboration.
But I just want to say thank you so much for doing this today.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
And I hope those listening have enjoyed it. To those who are listening to the podcast today, I guarantee if you go online, look for basketball pictures of BBL, GB, what have you, you will not be able to go through them without seeing a picture taken by Mansoor Ahmed. It's just impossible. Now, if anybody wants to follow your work, what's the best way to do it?
Twitter and Instagram, although Instagram I'm just new to that. Twitter is the main platform I use to put my pictures.
What's your Twitter handle?
Twitter handle is I am Ahmed Photos, all one word. And it's the same for the Instagram.
Brilliant. So there you have it. Why not check out the great photos that Mansoor publishes regularly on social media? I guarantee you will not be disappointed. That's it for this edition of the Hoops and Hockey podcast. I really hope you enjoyed it. My name's Niall Gray. Thank you so much, Mansoor.
Thanks, Niall. Thanks for having me. It's been a privilege to talk about my career.
No problem. Stay safe and bye for now.
The Hoops and Hockey podcast.